Stewart's podcast, The Weekly Show, a listener submitted a question asking what we, the American people, can do to protect democracy and preserve our government. Stewart's response was essentially that we already did our part. We already elected leaders in Congress to do this job for us, but since they can't or won't, the responsibility has fallen back to us, the everyday people.
Considering all the cuts and layoffs DOJ is implementing, especially as it affects veterans, what can ordinary people do to push back?
Oh, Jesus. Man, I so appreciate the question. And the frustration I always have is like that it's left to ordinary people. Like that's the part that makes me so mad, that like our elected representatives are there. We send them to Washington so that we're, every time, the hits the fan with this, there's always that question of like, I liken it to like if you're at a basketball game and your team's just getting kicked out of them, and in the timeout, the players just turn to the crowd and go like, all right, you're in.
And there is a feeling of helplessness when you watch the system that you didn't have any choice but to buy into fail you. I know some people choose not to participate in politics where they don't pay attention, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But whether or not they care to acknowledge it, the politics in this nation directly affects them, as it directly affects what the country they live in is going to look like in the future. Still, if you live in this country, this is the system of government that we've got. It's not perfect, but it's worked for us more or less. The ratio of more or less is certainly debatable, but let's say for the better part of 200 years, it's worked for us. Within the system, checks and balances have been built in. There's a separation of powers. There is a distinct anti-monarchical bend to the way that we've chosen to run things in this country. When you live here, you do so with the understanding that this is our form of government. The people are given the opportunity and the right to participate in their government. And most of us do that, at the very least, by voting in elections. It's the easiest and most systematic way for the average American to have their voice be heard. Others participate in ways that are more involved than that, but the voting system is there as the backbone of our democracy. But when that system doesn't seem to be working as it should, we're supposed to be able to rely on those checks and balances to correct any issues. And when those checks and balances fail, then what? And when the public outrage and outcries fall on deaf ears, when nationwide protests aren't being reported by the media, when town hall meetings devolve into debauchery, then what? Here's more of what Jon Stewart had to say.
Keep vigilant, stay on it, and when a task comes, but there has to be leadership in this. That, ultimately, if this gets to, a Veterans March on Washington, which they did do, and it was really, these are real people that throughout the country stood up and said, these cuts are hurting people, they're hurting us, and very little blip. It's very hard to break through. So there has to be, what we learned during the fight for PACT Act or Zadroga or any of those things is, it takes strategy and leadership from the top that is able to empower people to particular tasks. And that has to be, that plan has to be developed. But man, the fact that people are out there saying, what can we do, says there's a thirst for that leadership and for direction. And hopefully it will be provided, because, the usual is call your congressman. But I can tell you, man, they ignore that unless it's really targeted and really specific to a certain date or action. And that date or action has not been articulated yet, but it will be. It has to be.
Stewart speaks of leadership on the left. There seemingly isn't any right now. There are a handful of representatives in Congress that are trying to be leaders to their constituents or just to anyone who feels lost and helpless right now, but there is no Donald Trump of the left. And that's a little tricky. Does the left even want their version of Donald Trump, someone who commands cult-like loyalty to the point that he discourages individual thought amongst his followers? No, but the left really could use someone who speaks for the party. The catch is that the message being spoken needs to be backed and supported by the party the way it is on the right, both by the elected officials and by its voters. Again, I personally wouldn't be comfortable just backing everything my elected leaders said and did without questioning those things for myself. I'd imagine many of you watching this feel the same way. But in that, the strength of the left is often its weakness. There is no such message right now that is truly unifying. Our leaders are pushing corporatism and courting billionaires. A lot of voters don't like that. Our leaders are backing and funding Israel. A lot of voters don't like that. Our leaders are constantly caving to Republicans and Elon Musk while invading our phones with text messages begging us for more money because just one more donation from you is going to save democracy. Voters really don't like that.
This is a relentless fight. They always talk about, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But it doesn't bend towards justice by gravity. Like, you have to bend it. And there's a bunch of people trying to bend it back. And you use every tool in your arsenal.
But speaking more broadly, members of the left are either too progressive or too conservative. That's why there's so much infighting on the left. Politics is a spectrum, and these days the spectrum on the left is just too broad. If someone isn't at the exact same spot on the spectrum as we are, then they're no good. If a candidate did one thing that we didn't like, they're dismissed. They're dead to us. The left demands perfection from its leaders, where the right seemingly does not. Trump is their imperfect vessel, after all. But the left hasn't yet learned that perfection does not exist. The only one who's ever come close to being a perfect leader for progressives is Bernie, but the Democratic Party establishment as a whole does not like him. Democratic voters, many of whom either switched parties or just didn't vote in the last election, feel helpless and like we're out of options. This is why. This is exactly why. When the leaders we elected to fight for us and the things we support seem to have no fight in them, then what? We just have to wait for the next election cycle to maybe vote them out of office and try again with someone new? What have they been doing all this time? They commiserate with the voting public all the time as if they're just telling us, we hear you, we see you, we feel you. Well, thanks to them for listening, sort of, but frankly, that's not enough. I didn't vote anyone into office so they could commiserate with me. I can do that with my friends. I voted for leaders to do something about the broken things in our government and society that I can't do anything about on my own, beyond feeling badly about what's happening. And the crazy part is that these people wanted this job so badly. They campaigned for the job. They spent all kinds of money on those campaigns. They organized, they fundraised, they knocked on doors, they sent out newsletters and text messages. They wanted this job, but it would appear they wanted it for all of the wrong reasons. Go figure. And now that they've got the job that they wanted, they don't want to do the work. So maybe we can take Jon Stewart's advice and focus our needs and demands, make it easier for these fancy people who can't handle big problems, even though they were all so confident that they could when they were campaigning. Maybe we accept that we have no leadership and just work to solve all of our problems by ourselves, even though we really shouldn't have to, at least not to this extent. And maybe somewhere, a leader of the left will emerge who we can all get behind, even if we don't like or agree with everything they say or do. I don't know how or when that will even happen, especially with the situation in Palestine. There seems to be no possible reconciliation on that topic for the left, or at least I can't see it. People on the left are either vehemently in support of the Palestinians or they're vehemently in support of the Israelis. There is really little room in there for any compromise, and this is one issue that has so divided the left that it will be hard to overcome. But until we do, this is the party we've been left with. So we all have to just do our part, whatever that looks like for us. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.